It's time. This is the Media Night Podcast.
Welcome to the Media Night Podcast. I'm your host, Zach, and I have with me my podcast partner, Ty.
How's it going?
We're a weekly podcast that talks about movies, TV shows, podcasts, music. So this week, we're covering
Deliver us from evil.
2014 movie, I believe. I'm not really into the demons, you know what I mean? So I don't know what you had me watching there, Ty. You know what I mean? But before we get into that, talk about what we did over the last 2 weeks. Basically, I went on vacation. I went to my home country to go see my grandparents. Spent a bit of time on the beach with what sun that we did have. It was a good time. And I have to say, Ty, you missed out.
Yeah, definitely.
Other than sitting on the beach, I did have a chance to watch the Werewolf by Night special from Marvel. And I have to say, it's probably hands down one of the better things that they've done in a while. It was styled in like this black and white kind of like, like super old horror movie style. And the story was about Elsa Bloodstone and the Werewolf by Night. I forget his name right now, but that guy. And Elsa's father died, so she's come back and they're doing this thing to like, I don't know, choose the next like head of the monster guild or whatever. So she comes back to get the stone as her birthright, and the werewolf dude, he's there to basically free the monster. So they affixed the gem to the monster, and then all the hunters have to go and try and get the stone, and whoever gets it is the leader, right? The werewolf guy teams up with Elsa, they get the stone, some shit goes down, and they capture them. And basically, he turns into the werewolf in the last like 9 minutes of the show, which is kind of a piss off because I'm like, I want to see werewolf, you know what I mean? But yeah, other than that, I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. So that's basically Werewolf by Night. The next thing, I basically caught up on a lot of things in the last 2 days since I've been back. I've basically been still on vacation while just taking in TV shows. So I've watched the first episode of Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War. Have you checked that out yet, Ty?
Not yet.
It's looks so dope. Like the new animation looks so crisp. The only thing I have kind of an issue with is they changed Ichigo's like Getsuga. Like remember how it was black and red, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, that looks so dope. And in this one, it's black and white, right? I mean, it kind of makes sense why it's black and white, further down in the story, but it's been black and red for the longest. I swear I thought it was still black and red at the end of the show. I might have to go back and look at Bleach and see what color it was, but like, yeah, they just kind of randomly changed it. Even his basic like Kitsuga Tensho is yellow, so it's kind of different. And even when he turned in, like when he activated his Bankai, it was all different colors. So if anything, that's the only issue I have. But it looked freaking sick. That's all I have to say. It looks great. So you definitely should watch that sooner rather than later. I believe new episodes are like Monday or Tuesday. So episode 2 will be out pretty soon. Next up, I watched the first episode of Chainsaw Man, and I haven't read that manga in a while, so I kind of forget the story. So this anime is actually a pretty good like, refresher on the Chainsaw Man. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to keep it going, you know what I mean? Like blood, the animation looks great. So, and there's like lots of Easter eggs in the opening sequence, and I don't really want to go over them all, but yeah, it's a really well done, you know. So that's another one you should check. So while I was on the plane, I actually got a chance to watch the Secrets of Dumbledore or whatever the hell it's called, that third of the Fantastic Beasts franchise, right? And I have to say it sucked. It really was so boring, and I just couldn't get into it. It was just not interesting. So definitely have to give that movie a thumbs down, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it. Then up next, we probably have She-Hulk, the second to last episode where Daredevil showed up, and they teamed up, and basically nothing really special happened. I mean, She-Hulk and Daredevil, they hooked up, and Daredevil did the walk of shame, and so that was kind of funny. But other than that, nothing special. Then we get to the final episode where I thought we were gonna get a cool, awesome like fight scene. Everybody's there transforming. Hulk shows up, and she freaking like breaks the fourth wall, ruins the ending, chooses some shitty nonsense where the villain's captured, and then at the very end, Hulk shows up and he brings his kid Scar, and Scar looks like trash. Like, that's all I have to say. Like, come on. Like, I know you made nerdy Bruce Banner, but like, Scar's like a caveman. That was like his thing. And like, all of a sudden now he's just gonna be looks just like a regular teenager, but green. Even had a man bun. Like, what? What's going on, Marvel? So, definitely a huge letdown for a final episode, I must say. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. So, I mean, realistically, overall, I give She-Hulk a thumbs down. The series was not good. I mean, I only enjoyed one or two episodes. So, yeah, big thumbs down for She-Hulk. And then today I have finished watching the first season of Black Summoner. And I really enjoy that show. It's one of those shows like an isekai where they get sucked into, I mean, this random world, and they're like have gaming powers where they can level up and get skills and shit. And, main character is an overpowered character. But it was good. I enjoyed the overall story. His crew is coming together pretty cool, and he even summoned his own like person. So like he like brought someone into the world, and like that person is now on his squad. It's really good. I can't wait for season 2. And yeah. And lastly, before we get into the movie, I have finally completed my shiny living Pokedex with all the legitimate shinies you could possibly get without, getting fake shinies to get those, random mythical Pokemon or, you know, shiny locked, DLC Pokemon. I have all the acquirable shiny Pokemon. Now I just have to wait for the new game and then start shiny hunting in the new game. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that goes. I hope they don't add too many Pokemon because that's going to be a bitch to shiny hunt. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. What about you, Ty? Do you have anything like what did you do over the 2 weeks?
Playing this game called Days Gone, like a zombie apocalyptic kind of game. It's been pretty fun.
Yeah, I seen you streaming it, but I was kind of busy, so I didn't have a chance to watch it. Because realistically, I could only use my phone when I had data or like internet, like Wi-Fi. Other than that, I can just basic text and basic call. That's all, all I really had access to while I was out there. So it's generally about zombies
Yeah,
and a guy in his motorcycle.
yeah, that's pretty much I guess like bikers.
So the main character's a biker. Is this the one
Yeah,
where you fight like crazy hordes and hordes of zombies?
I haven't come well. Once I came across like a bunch of them, but I haven't come across like too many hordes. But yeah, I think that definitely is the game.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check those out when I get some time. Probably on my like way back and forth to work. Watch one of the videos. See how the game goes. See if I even want to try it out. I'm not a really big fan of zombie games, but yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fun game.
Do you have to like create your weapons or
No, you just like scavenge them, but you can find like blueprints to like create different weapons.
okay. So what's your main best weapon?
I would say the rifles.
The ARs.
Yeah, definitely.
So like the automatic weapons are probably your best bet, not like a chainsaw.
I don't even know if they have a chainsaw.
I feel like you should. I feel like that motorcycle has a slot for a chainsaw.
Yeah, maybe probably eventually.
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the movie, I guess. We're doing Deliver Us from Evil. Came out in 2014. It stars Eric Bana, Edgar Ramirez, and Olivia Munn. Not really. Know why? Buddy from the Community. I remember what his name is. He was in the movie more than she was. It was directed by Scott Derrickson. I don't know him from anything. And the movie was based on a book. The movie starts off, we see like shots of a desert. Then we hear some gunfire in the background. Then we see some soldiers basically rushing a tree line. And while they're in the trees, they spot some people running around. So they kind of chase them down and just gun them down and just murder them all. I mean, they are in a war zone. But I don't know if those are the bad guys. So once they catch the guys, they notice this kind of like stairway leading them down. And I don't know why the fuck you would ever follow that shit. Nope. Okay, we're good. I'm out. Right? We killed the bad guys. Let's get out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as they head down, we start to get like cam footage, like from like the helmet of one of the soldiers. And then all of a sudden it just blacks out and we just start hearing screaming. Then we cut to the city and we just get like a cityscape and we find out that we're in the Bronx. We pick up at a crime scene where we meet the main character, Ralph Searchy. And I'm just going to be calling him Ralph because I don't know why, but everybody in the movie calls him Searchy. If you watch the movie, I'm talking about Searchy, but I'm calling him Ralph. And so he's at a crime scene and he's trying to like resuscitate a baby, and we don't really know the background about it, but the baby's obviously dead. And then we move on and Buddy walks away all pissed off. This is where we meet his partner, and his name is Butler. And they get a call about some violent dispute involving a Marine. And then they have this little talk about this guy having this radar where he can sense, I'm not even sure what he senses, but like, can he sense like bad stuff? Whatever the case may be, right? They show up at this house. This sketchy dude kind of answers the door, and then they find his wife, and his wife's all beat up. So they go to arrest the guy, and the guy pulls out a knife, cuts the main character, and basically then takes off running, right? So they go and chase after him. Ralph catches him and just starts beating the shit out of him. Butler comes over, stops him, and they arrest him essentially, but he gets out quite quickly, right? Or do they even arrest him? I don't even remember. Do you remember?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because like when he went back to go talk to the wife was like, "Yeah, he was here, and then I didn't see him again." So I don't know if they just let him go because they beat the shit out of him, but whatever the case may be. Then cut to another dude named Mendoza, and he's like sitting at a table and he's like all kind of stressed out and whatnot. And he's like, I don't understand why they showed this because it doesn't come up ever again in the movie. But he starts working out. He goes for a run, goes to a bar. Some lady tries to pick him up. He ignores her. He bounces, right? Then we cut back to Ralph, and he's now at a zoo where they find out this crazy woman threw her kid into like the animal pit or like into like one of those ditches in front of the animal pit, which is quite fucked up, let me just say. No?
Yeah.
So she throws her kid and then she takes off. So Ralph and Butler have to go and find her. We get a few jump scares as they search this like blacked out zoo, right? Because apparently when she threw the kid, the power went out, so she got away. So she's hiding somewhere. Then then we see Ralph. He finds the woman, and she's like digging in the ground frantically. And then we see her scratching on like stone with her hands. So I guess her hands are now all fucked up, right? And it was quite gross. And when they catch her, they cuff her, and she's just like singing some like random song. But then Ralph kind of notices this guy in the pit, and he's like the painter, like this painter guy, and he's painting up. He's like looks like graffiti essentially. So Ralph tells him, chill out. I'm gonna come over there. So he heads over, and the dude just kind of like walks off, right? So Ralph goes to follow him, and then basically he's confronted by two big ass fucking male lions. And I don't know if you can necessarily have two male lions together. I don't know if it's in their nature, or maybe because they're zoo like raised in captivity, it's fine. But normally you don't have multiple male, right? So he barely gets away from the two lions, and then we cut to him at home, and we see his wife Jen, and then we see his daughter Christina. We then cut back to the station where Crazy Lady is being taken to a mental ward, and Mendoza, this priest guy, he's essentially asking for her to be released to him. And they're like, yeah, no, she's going to the loony bin. And so we then learn Ralph is basically, he's still looking for like the painter guy, right? And then like his boys start talking about like this family, you know, house is haunted type of thing. So for some reason he decides to take it because I guess his sense goes off, right? And yeah, so then the next we head to the house, and then he's greeted by this Italian family. They tell him about the house being haunted. He doesn't believe it, and they lead the two cops, they lead them down to the basement, and they say this is where the evil's coming from. So they go down, check it out, and Butler, he gets scared as a rat trap goes off, so he's like, "Yeah, fuck this," and goes back upstairs. So Ralph is still looking around the basement, and he ends up finding a dead body, and the body just explodes and flies like come out of it, and it's quite gross, you know? And so they ID the guy, and it turns out he's a painter that they hired, and he worked with that crazy dude that they found at the lion pit. So it all kind of connects. They go check out the house of the painter guy, and they find a picture, and it turns out that the crazy lady from the zoo is that like the dead painter's wife, and the child that was thrown into the pit is their child. But I'm going to say the child is apparently fine. Like he just had minor wounds or something. That's what they said. Kid doesn't come up anymore. So, kid is fine, just so you. In this house is disgusting. It's covered in roaches and all kinds of shit. So, as they're exploring the house, they find another picture, and then we see in the picture there's the guy who beat up his wife, the crazy painter dude with the hoodie in the middle, and then the dead painter on the side, right? So they're all three of those guys are all connected, and it doesn't really come up right away. But they basically put together that the last guy in the photo is the crazy guy from the lion pit. They notice in the photo that the guy in the middle, his name is Santino. So the cops hear something, and they all basically go to check it out and find a random chained up dog and like this cat that is like cut open down the middle and like spread across on a crucifix. It was kind of fucked up, and I didn't quite understand what that meant. So we then cut back to Ralph at home, and Jen tells him she's pregnant as she's leaving for church. We then see his fish gang up and just murder this one fish that was of a different species, I guess, or whatever. And to me, this did make sense. Those were like five different fighter fish. Those fighter fish would have killed each other and maybe killed the other fish, but they would have all killed each other as well. They wouldn't have all been in the same tank. So I don't understand what that even meant. But like, why did they even show that? Because that never really even came up again. Did that make any sense to you?
No.
So we then cut back to the station, and Ralph is confronted by Mendoza, and he's asking to see the tapes from the zoo. Mendoza tries to convince Ralph that the lady is possessed and asks him to let him know if they find anything like supernatural on the tapes. So then we cut to the actual tapes, and we see Ralph Ralph is he's like starting to like hear things, and then he gets these random flashes of some like dead guy, which to be honest didn't make any sense. So was that the guy that he like beat up? Was that Marvin that kept popping up that he was seeing?
I don't remember.
So we pick up at Ralph's house where he essentially freaks out on his daughter because she's being all hyper and stuff. She just came back, she won a new toy, and she's running around the room screaming. So he yells at her and she takes off and she's upset. And his wife is like, "Yo, what the fuck was that?" And he like explains his week about how they found the baby in the dumpster and he gave it mouth to mouth, but it was already dead. And so he was just having a really bad week. And then this whole zoo thing. And, she kind of understands. So she goes off to go and, comfort the daughter. We then pick up with Ralph asking the wife beater's wife, the woman that was beat up. So he starts asking her about Santino, and he learns that they were supposed to, like, they were all friends, and the two other guys were supposed to come over and paint the office. And we kind of get a little bit of background on, their like friendship and whatnot. Ralph asks to see the office, so she takes him back there, and Ralph notices like tapes, and she tells him, "Oh, it's like footage from the cameras. Like one buddy was in the army, he used to like film their missions." So Ralph asks if he could stay and watch it, but then he notices something like in the wall, so he decides to like scrape off this thing, and we get a picture like of a bird, and then it cuts over to his daughter Christina, and she gets woken up by this weird like scratching noises. She just like runs off, right? We then cut back to Ralph, and he finishes scraping off the wall when the power goes out, and he basically goes to check it out. And when he steps out of the room, he basically just gets attacked by the wife beater. And yeah, then he just like stops and then runs and jumps out the window and escapes, right? So we then see the footage and we see the same writing on the wall as that's in the office. It's also the same writing that the painter guy was painting over in the lion's den, right? And in the footage, we see like a whole bunch of bats, and then we see one of the guys, he looks kind of possessed, and he's just like staring at the writing on the wall. So we cut to the next day, and Ralph, he goes to the psych ward, and he's joined by Mendoza, who actually gets him in, and they go to talk to the crazy lady. She starts speaking in Latin, but then she stops when Ralph shows her a picture of the writings on the wall. She then bites Ralph on the arm where he was cut earlier, so I think that might be why it bled so much. But I don't know. It was whatever. So we then cut to Ralph and Mendoza. They're talking at a bar about the writings, and we learned that the writings are these doors that allow demons to possess people. Essentially, let like the doors let evil in, and we learned like the background of Mendoza and why Ralph doesn't believe in God anymore. Mendoza shows Ralph a recording of the first exorcism he ever did, and he explains that this event basically set him on this path. He then challenges Ralph to pool. We then cut to Ralph arriving at home where Jen tells him about Christina, and he goes to check on her where he sees this bloody guy again in the mirror and kind of trips out, right? So we then cut back to the asylum and we see this crazy lady has killed the guards and she's now like escaping. Then we jump over to the station and Mendoza tells us that the writings on the wall allows those who are susceptible to being possessed. Whoever looks at it can get possessed if you're like weak enough. At this point, Mendoza now tells Ralph that his sense is like a gift. Like he can hear stuff that other people can't, and like some kind of, I don't know, demon attunement. I don't understand what it is, but whatever the case may be, that he has this gift. And then Butler comes up and he says, "Oh, he's got an address for Santino." So we then see Christina, and she starts freaking out and screaming as the lights go out, and there's a whole bunch of scratching going on. We then pick up with Ralph and Mendoza. He tells him he needs to face his inner demons, which is kind of ironic. As this happens, they basically spot Santino. Ralph and Butler follow him inside, and Ralph starts hearing music, which is kind of weird, right? But they spot Santino in this elevator, but they can't get to him in time, and they learn that it's heading to the basement. So Butler goes off one way, Santino ends up following down faster for some reason. So as he's searching the basement, he starts hearing voices, and we see Santino's like watching him from like he's like up on like I don't know, basements apparently have pipes that hang down a little bit, so he's chilling on the pipes, right? And then all of a sudden the windows start blowing out and Ralph just like takes off running. And then like Mendoza sees this while he's sitting in the car. So he's like, all right, I guess I'm going in to help. And as Ralph, he's basically still searching around the place, he gets grabbed by the wife beater and he starts getting choked out, right? So we then cut to Butler, and he gets attacked by Santino, and he's taken down pretty easily. We then see Ralph get saved by Mendoza, like with some prayers and stuff, and it stops the guy from attacking him. We cut back to Butler. He gets murdered by Santino with like a little tomahawk. It was actually pretty cool. Then we see Mendoza again, and he exercises and he calms down the wife beater, and this gives Ralph the opportunity to cuff him. Ralph then goes on to find Butler's body, calls it in. Then we see Ralph and Mendoza, and Ralph starts like confessing to him, and we learn that Ralph killed this guy, this child pedophile murderer, and he basically beat the dude to death with his fists, like just kept beating the shit out of him until he died. It was pretty intense. So Mendoza absolves him of his sins. We then see Christina, and she gets woken up by her toys, and she starts freaking out. So she opens her door to run out, and boom, Santino's standing there, and he starts heading towards her. We then see Ralph driving, and all of a sudden, the fucking crazy lady jumps off the roof and fucking smashes into his windshield, right? So boom, crazy lady's now dead. Then Ralph gets a call from Jen, and instead of it being Jen, it turns out it's Santino calling. So he freaks out. He starts heading home, calls in backup. So as Ralph gets to his house, he finds Santino, who basically lets them capture him, or he wanted Ralph to like let him in. He kept saying like let me in, and he wanted him to like kill him. I didn't quite understand this scene. Like, did it make any sense to you?
No, not really.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. But we learned that he took Jen and Christina and they're off somewhere, and if he doesn't let him in, they're gonna die. Okay? I don't know. It didn't really make sense. It was really weird. So they take him back to the precinct, and we next see him. He's all strapped up, but apparently just breaks out of it easily. And they start exercising him. He slaps Mendoza, and then Mendoza's like, "All right, we have to do this together." So they work together. They start exercising him, and as they start, Santino starts like freaking out, and it seems like it's working. And to the point where the demon starts to come out, this guy gets like these two gashes over his forehead, and the demon starts speaking in Spanish. So the demon actually almost corrupts Mendoza. Ralph snaps him out of it, and they continue to find out that the demon's name is the Jungler, and finally succeed in expelling the demon. Ralph gets the location of Jen and Christina, and then we see a scene of them getting found. And then we pick up 7 months later, and Ralph and Jen are getting their newborn baby daughter baptized. And then in writing, we learn after the baptism, he soon retired from the force, but he still works with Mendoza. And that's basically the end of the movie. Overall, what'd you think of it, Ty?
So it was a pretty good movie. I really enjoyed the whole scene where they're in the precinct and trying to exorcise the demon from the guy. Thought that scene was pretty cool. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really into like the whole exorcism demon things. I just I don't really care for it much. You know what I mean? I'd rather watch werewolves and vampires.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a bad movie. I didn't hate it. The jump scares weren't even that scary, but overall it was fairly decent. Um, and then yeah, I would have to say, yeah, the last scene, the exorcism scene, was probably like the best thing that happened because there was so much disposition, them just like jumping back and forth, chasing after the one guy, and yeah, that was basically the movie. So yeah, definitely that last scene was probably the better part of the movie, right? So if you'd have to pick one thing you didn't like,
Yeah, a lot of the story like kind of really didn't make sense. Kind of like was jumping all over the place.
yeah, I agree with that.
What about you?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The story was pretty shite. What I what I didn't like was the whole yeah, no, just like yeah, the jumping around. It was stupid. Like just give me some coherent story. Like the whole girl being scared didn't make any sense of why it was in the movie. You know what I mean? Definitely did not need to be in there, those scenes, other than the one scene where she gets kidnapped. That's the only time where it's relevant, right? And it also had nothing to do with the other two times she was woken up. You know, like or the other two times she was scared, whereas the scratching noises. But this time when she got kidnapped, it was like her toys started waking up and moving and activating, you know? Like, what? Like, so all of that shit was so pointless. And they could have just put in that one scene where the toys like activate and then she wakes up, right? And the toys activate because the creepy dude was in the house, like the demon was in the house, right? That would have made sense. You didn't need all the like the little girl. So I would say all those scenes with the little girl, definitely my most disliked part about the movie. But yeah, so that pretty much brings us to the end. So we're not too sure what we're going to do next week. I know I said that we were going to cover Hocus Pocus, but I think I'm just going to watch it and we'll talk about it at the beginning of the episode. I don't really feel like covering the whole movie. I'd rather do another scary movie. So we'll announce it at some point during the week of what movie we're going to be doing next week. So make sure you check out our social medias for that. And speaking of social media, you can find us on all platforms at Media Night Podcast. And the Media Night Podcast is part of the Geek Talk Network. So make sure you check out the other show on the network, What in the Anime, with Dustin and Tyler. They review anime movies, they talk about anime news, they sometimes do battles, like between characters. They also do trivia sometimes. And yeah, so make sure you go check them out. What in the Anime? All right, so with that out of the way, Ty, it's been real.
Yeah, has been.
Deuces.